People think starting with nothing is a disadvantage, but let me tell you something most people never figure out. It's often the opposite. When you have nothing, you have the most important thing in the world: freedom. Freedom to move, freedom to fail, freedom to learn without catastrophic consequences. It's so simple, really. You spend less than you earn, invest shrewdly, and avoid toxic people and toxic activities, and try to keep learning all your life. Do a lot of deferred gratification because you prefer life that way. If you do all those things, you are almost certain to succeed. And if you don't, you're going to need a lot of luck. And you don't want to need a lot of luck. Now, here's what happens when you start with nothing. Your mistakes are cheap. It's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's even better to learn from other people's mistakes. I want to learn as much as I can vicariously. It's too painful to do it by personal hardship. I collect big calamities in my head and big stupidities. I do that so I can avoid them. But when you're starting out broke, your own mistakes become incredible teachers because they cost you almost nothing. $80 lost teaches you the same lesson that might cost a wealthy person $70,000. Same education, vastly different tuition. There's no way you can live an adequate life without many mistakes. The question is, can you afford to make them? You don't overspend your income. This is the foundation of everything. When you have nothing, maintaining this discipline is actually easier than when you have something, because you haven't yet built the lifestyle trap. You haven't compounded 20 years of bad decisions into a prison that requires $250,000 a year just to maintain. Here's another thing people don't understand. To get what you want, you have to deserve what you want. The world is not yet a crazy enough place to reward a whole bunch of undeserving people. How to find a good spouse? The best single way is to deserve a good spouse. Same principle applies to wealth, to opportunities, to everything worth having. When you start with nothing, you can focus entirely on becoming someone who deserves what you want, rather than protecting what you already have. That's genuine freedom. The person earning $40,000 who saves half of it has more real freedom than the person earning $280,000 who spends all of it. One can move anywhere in a week. The other is trapped by mortgages, private schools, country club memberships, and all the other anchors they've attached to themselves. Spend less than you make. Always be saving something. Put it into a tax-deferred account. Over time, it will begin to amount to something. This is such a no-brainer, but here's what nobody tells you. It's easier to implement this when you're starting with nothing than when you're trying to unwind years of lifestyle inflation. The person with nothing can take the job in another city that pays 30% more. The person with the big house and the expensive lifestyle cannot, even though they earn far more. The person with nothing can try 5 business experiments for $1,200 total. The person with significant wealth often cannot psychologically handle failure at any price, even when they can afford it financially. You deal with reliable people and you do what you're supposed to do. Simple principles. But starting with nothing makes following these principles straightforward, because you're not yet corrupted by comfort, by status anxiety, by the need to maintain appearances. You can be honest about what you don't know. You can say, I need to learn this, without ego getting in the way. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up. Boy, does that help. particularly when you have a long run ahead of you. Starting with nothing, you have the longest possible run ahead and the clearest incentive to become a learning machine. So if you're starting 2026 with nothing, recognize what you actually have: freedom to move fast, permission to fail cheap, and a clean slate to build discipline before lifestyle inflation compounds against you. These advantages disappear quickly. The window where you can exploit them is maybe 3 to 5 years. Use it wisely, because once you've built wealth or lifestyle, whichever comes first, these advantages are gone forever. And most people build lifestyle first and wonder why wealth never arrives. You know, people think starting with nothing is a disadvantage, but let me tell you something. Most people never figure out it's often the opposite. When you have nothing, you have the most important thing in the world: freedom. Freedom to move, freedom to fail, freedom to learn without catastrophic consequences. It's so simple, really. You spend less than you earn, invest shrewdly, and avoid toxic people and toxic activities, and try to keep learning all your life. Do a lot of deferred gratification because you prefer life that way. If you do all those things, you are almost certain to succeed. And if you don't, you're going to need a lot of luck. And you don't want to need a lot of luck. Now, here's what happens when you start with nothing. Your mistakes are cheap. It's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's even better to learn from other people's mistakes. I want to learn as much as I can vicariously. It's too painful to do it by personal hardship. I collect big calamities in my head and big stupidities. I do that so I can avoid them. But when you're starting out broke, your own mistakes become incredible teachers because they cost you almost nothing. $80 lost teaches you the same lesson that might cost a wealthy person $70,000. Same education, vastly different tuition. There's no way you can live an adequate life without many mistakes. The question is, can you afford to make them?
Here is something most people do not understand. Starting 2026 with nothing is not a disadvantage. It is an advantage when you have nothing to protect. No lifestyle, no image, no expensive habits trapping you. I have watched rich people freeze in fear because they could not risk losing what they already had. Meanwhile, the broke person who understands this truth can move faster, learn faster, and build faster. Today, I'm going to explain the 3 advantages only people with nothing have and how to use them to change your financial life permanently. Welcome to Harper Mumbling. This story begins with 2 people starting 2026 in radically different financial positions. The first person, we will call her Diana, is 39 years old and starting the year with $180 in her checking account, $8,000 in credit card debt, and no investments. She works in customer service, earning $42,000 annually after taxes. She is by any measure broke. The second person, we will call him Richard, is 41 years old and starting the year earning $280,000 annually as a senior manager. He has $85,000 in retirement accounts, owns a home with $180,000 in equity, and appears financially successful by every external measure. But here is what nobody sees. Richard is trapped. His mortgage payment is $3,800 monthly. His 2 car payments total $1,100. Private school for his 2 children costs $2,400 monthly. His lifestyle spending, the restaurants and travel and memberships that define his social identity, cost another $3,500 monthly. After taxes, Richard takes home approximately $14,500 per month and spends $13,800. He saves $700 monthly, which sounds good until you realize it represents only 4.8% of his income. 1 job loss, 1 market crash affecting his industry, 1 unexpected major expense, and Richard's entire financial life collapses because he has built a lifestyle his income barely supports. Diana is not trapped. Her rent is $950. She has no car payment, driving a 15-year-old sedan. She has no dependents. Her lifestyle is already minimal because she's never had money to build an expensive one. If she loses her job, the consequences are immediate but not catastrophic because she was already living close to survival level. She can move faster, adapt faster, and take risks that Richard cannot even consider. This is the paradox of starting from zero. It feels like a disadvantage, but strategically deployed, it becomes a weapon. The first advantage of having nothing is freedom to take extreme risks that people with comfortable lifestyles cannot touch. In January 2026, Diana recognized this advantage explicitly and decided to exploit it. She calculated that her minimal lifestyle cost approximately $1,800 monthly: rent, utilities, food, transportation, debt minimums, and nothing else. Any dollar above $1,800 was disposable, and she could restructure her life around maximizing that disposable income without worrying about maintaining appearances or protecting a lifestyle. Diana's first risk was geographical. She had been living in a mid-sized city where rent was high but necessary for her current job. In February, when a fully remote customer service position opened at a different company paying $45,000 annually, she applied immediately and got it. The moment the offer came, she gave notice on her apartment and moved to a small town 2 hours away where she could rent a comparable space for $650 monthly. This single move saved her $300 monthly, $3,600 annually, without reducing her quality of life because her lifestyle was already minimal. Richard could never make this move. His children's schools were in their current city. His wife's career was location dependent. His social network and identity were tied to their neighborhood. He was geographically locked. Diana's second risk was time allocation. She had been working her customer service job roughly 38 hours per week with evenings and weekends free for social activities she could not afford anyway. In March, she added a second income stream, freelance data entry and virtual assistant work, dedicating 15 hours per week every evening to building this side business. Then she added weekend food delivery, another 16 hours weekly. She was now working 69 hours per week, a pace that would horrify Richard, but Diana had no lifestyle to sacrifice. She was not missing expensive dinners or vacation plans. She was trading television time and social media scrolling for income generation. Richard could not replicate this. His identity was wrapped up in being a senior manager who did not need side hustles. His peer group would judge him if he delivered food on weekends. His energy was consumed maintaining his current lifestyle and job performance. Diana had the freedom to look desperate because she was desperate, and that freed her to act in ways comfortable people cannot. By April, Diana was earning her $45,000 salary plus approximately $1,200 monthly from freelance work plus $1,100 from delivery, totaling roughly $5,200 monthly. She was out earning Richard in terms of savings rate despite earning 1/5 his gross income. The second advantage of starting from zero is that your mistakes are cheap, which means you can afford to experiment until something works. In May, Diana decided to test whether she could generate income from a skill she had been developing informally for years, graphic design. She spent $400 on design software and equipment, created a portfolio using free time on weekends, and started marketing her services on freelance platforms. The experiment failed. After 2 months, she had generated only $150 in revenue, nowhere near enough to justify the time investment. She abandoned the experiment in July. This failure cost Diana $400 plus roughly 60 hours of her time. Annoying but not devastating, she absorbed the loss and moved on to the next experiment. If Richard had attempted a similar side business and failed, it would have been a social disaster. His peers would have judged him for the failure. His identity as a successful executive would have been threatened. The $400 financial loss would have been trivial, but the reputational cost would have been significant. So Richard never experiments. He stays in his lane, does what he knows, and never discovers whether he has other income-generating abilities because the cost of failure is too high psychologically. Diana's second experiment in August was reselling. She spent $600 buying discounted inventory from a liquidation sale, products she researched and believed she could flip for profit online. This experiment succeeded. Within 6 weeks, she had sold everything for $1,350, a net profit of $750 after fees and shipping. She took that $750 plus another $900 from her savings and bought more inventory. By October, her reselling side hustle was generating $400 to $600 monthly in profit for approximately 10 hours of weekly work. She had found a third income stream, but only because she was willing to fail at the first experiment. Over the course of 2026, Diana tried 4 different side income approaches. 2 failed completely, costing her a total of $700 and considerable time. 2 succeeded, generating ongoing monthly income that exceeded her losses by a factor of 10. Her cheap mistakes taught her what worked and what did not, and because the financial cost of failure was low, she could keep experimenting until she found profitable approaches. Richard made 0 experiments because he could not afford the reputational risk of visible failure, which meant he never discovered income streams beyond his primary employment. The third advantage of starting from zero is that you have not yet experienced compound lifestyle inflation, which is far more destructive than compound interest is beneficial. Richard's $280,000 income sounds impressive until you understand how he got there. He started his career earning $55,000. Each raise and promotion increased his income, but it also increased his lifestyle. When he earned $55,000, he lived in a modest apartment and drove an old car. When he reached $90,000, he bought a house. When he reached $140,000, he upgraded to a larger house in a better school district. When he reached $200,000, he leased luxury cars. Each lifestyle upgrade locked in new permanent expenses that did not decline when income temporarily declined. By the time Richard reached $280,000, his lifestyle consumed 95% of his income. He was not wealthy, he was a high-income prisoner of his own lifestyle choices. And here is the insidious part: each expense felt justified when it was added. Better schools for the kids, safer neighborhood, reliable car, clothes appropriate for his position. None of these felt like luxury. They all felt like necessities for someone at his level. But collectively, they created a lifestyle that required every dollar he earned, which meant he had no flexibility, no buffer, no freedom. Diana had not experienced this compound lifestyle inflation yet. Her lifestyle at $42,000 was essentially the same as her lifestyle at $30,000 would have been. She had not accumulated expensive tastes or expectations. This meant that when her income increased through side hustles, she did not automatically increase her spending. When her monthly income grew from $3,500 in January to $5,200 in June, her monthly expenses grew from $1,800 to only $1,950. The increase driven by higher food costs and gas for delivery work, not lifestyle upgrades. She was banking the difference. By December 2026, Diana had been generating significantly more income than expenses for 8 months. Her total savings had reached $14,300 in cash plus $3,200 in invested index funds, money she had started investing in September once she built her emergency fund. Her net worth had gone from negative $7,820 in January to positive $17,500 in December, a shift of $25,320 in 12 months. Richard's net worth had increased from approximately $265,000 to $280,000 over the same period, a gain of only $15,000 despite earning $280,000 because his lifestyle consumed nearly everything he made. Understanding these advantages is worthless unless you deliberately exploit them, which is what Diana did systematically throughout 2026. In September, Diana made a decision that would have been impossible for Richard. Her customer service job, while fully remote and decent paying, was ultimately a dead-end position with limited advancement potential. She decided to take 3 months and learn a higher value skill, specifically SQL and data analysis, through online courses. The courses cost $800 and required approximately 200 hours of study time. For 3 months, Diana reduced her side hustle hours to accommodate the learning time. This meant her income temporarily decreased by about $400 monthly. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, this would have been impossible. For Diana, with her $10,000 emergency fund built over the previous 6 months, it was uncomfortable but manageable. For Richard, the idea of taking 3 months to learn a new skill was theoretically possible but practically impossible because his lifestyle left no room for temporary income reduction and his identity was too tied to his current role to consider pivoting. By December, Diana had completed the certification and immediately began applying for data analyst positions. The certification, combined with her work history demonstrating reliability, made her competitive for entry-level analyst roles, paying $62,000 to $68,000. In January 2027, she accepted a position at $65,000, a 44% increase from her starting salary 12 months earlier. This single move, which required taking a risk Richard could never take because of his lifestyle constraints, increased her annual income by $20,000. Diana's calculation was simple. She spent $800 and sacrificed $1,200 in side hustle income over 3 months to gain $20,000 in annual salary. That is a 1,000% first-year return on investment, and the returns compound every year thereafter as her new baseline salary is $20,000 higher. She could only make this move because she had nothing to protect and had built enough cushion to absorb 3 months of reduced income. Richard, making 6 times Diana's starting salary, could not make an equivalent move because he had too much to protect. Diana's willingness to make cheap mistakes and iterate quickly gave her another advantage over Richard throughout 2026. In October, after her data analysis courses were complete, but before she had secured a new job, Diana noticed an opportunity in her local community. A small business owner she met through her delivery gig mentioned struggling to organize their customer data and track inventory. Diana offered to help for $500 using her newly learned SQL skills. The project took her 20 hours and went well. The business owner referred her to 2 other small business owners with similar needs. By November, Diana had a micro-consulting practice. She was charging $500 to $800 for small data organization projects that took her 15 to 25 hours to complete. She completed 3 projects in November and 2 in December, generating an additional $2,700 in income over 2 months. This was not a business she had planned to start. It emerged from taking action, making offers, and iterating based on what worked. Richard never started similar side ventures because the first attempt might fail, and failure would be visible to his peers and damaging to his identity as a successful corporate executive. Diana made another cheap mistake in November that taught her a valuable lesson. She invested $1,200 in inventory for her reselling business based on what had worked previously, but the product category she chose turned out to have much lower demand than expected. She sold through the inventory over 4 months instead of the projected 6 weeks, and her profit margin was only 15% instead of the expected 40%. She made $180 profit on a $1,200 investment, a terrible return, but she learned which product categories to avoid and adjusted her approach. The mistake cost her opportunity cost, but not catastrophic loss. By the end of 2026, Diana had attempted 7 different income-generating experiments. 3 failed entirely, costing her approximately $1,400 in total. 4 succeeded in varying degrees, generating ongoing income streams that collectively added $1,200 to $1,800 monthly beyond her primary job. Her net from experimentation was roughly $14,000 positive after accounting for failures. Richard attempted 0 experiments, which meant he discovered 0 new income streams and remained entirely dependent on his primary employment income. The most powerful advantage Diana exploited in 2026 was resisting lifestyle inflation even as her income increased dramatically. Her monthly income grew from $3,500 in January to over $6,800 by December, when all income streams were active. That is a 94% income increase. The natural temptation is to upgrade lifestyle proportionally. Diana resisted completely. In December, her monthly expenses were $2,100, only $300 higher than January, and the increase was driven entirely by business expenses for her side hustles, not personal lifestyle upgrades. This meant Diana was saving approximately $4,700 per month by December, a savings rate of 69%. She was saving more per month than she had earned gross in January. This is the power of combining income growth with lifestyle discipline. Richard, earning $280,000, saved approximately $700 per month, a savings rate of 4.8%. Diana, earning $81,600 annually by December, was saving 6 times more per month than Richard, despite earning one-third his income. The psychological difficulty of maintaining this discipline cannot be overstated. Diana's friends and family did not understand why she still lived in a small apartment in a cheap town when she was clearly making good money now. They did not understand why she still drove a 15-year-old car. They thought she was being cheap or weird. Some people she knew suggested she had psychological issues around money. But Diana understood that every dollar she spent on lifestyle was a dollar that could not be invested, and invested dollars compound while consumption disappears. By December 2026, Diana had accumulated $18,300 in liquid savings, $6,800 in invested index funds, and had reduced her debt from $8,000 to $1,200. Her net worth was approximately $23,900, an increase of $31,720 from her starting position of negative $7,820. Richard's net worth had increased from $265,000 to $280,000, a gain of $15,000. Diana's percentage net worth growth was infinite since she started in the negative. Her absolute dollar net worth growth was more than double Richard's, despite earning one-third his income. Diana's story demonstrates a truth that comfortable people refuse to acknowledge. Starting from zero is only a disadvantage if you waste the advantages it provides. Diana had 3 strategic advantages that Richard did not have. She had freedom to take risks without protecting a lifestyle. She had the ability to make cheap mistakes and iterate rapidly. She had time before compound lifestyle inflation locked her into expensive habits. She exploited all 3 advantages deliberately throughout 2026, and the result was wealth accumulation that dramatically exceeded what someone earning 6-figure income achieved. But here's the part of this story that most people will ignore. Diana did not stumble into these results. She made conscious, uncomfortable choices every single day for 12 months. She chose to work 70-hour weeks when her peers worked 40 and spent their free time on entertainment. She chose to live in a cheap town when she could afford a nicer city. She chose to drive an old car when her increasing income could justify something newer. She chose to skip holidays, social events, and every expensive experience her peers considered normal. She chose isolation over social validation, future wealth over present comfort, strategic advantage over lifestyle equality. Most people starting 2026 from zero will not make these choices. They will treat being broke as a problem to solve through gradual improvement while maintaining maximum comfort. They will work one job at 40 hours weekly and wonder why they stay broke. They will upgrade their lifestyle the moment their income increases, eliminating any chance of building savings. They will avoid experiments that might fail because failure is embarrassing. They will waste the only advantages they have: freedom, cheap mistakes, and time before lifestyle inflation compounds. Richard's story demonstrates the other side of this truth. Despite earning $280,000 annually, despite having $280,000 net worth, despite appearing successful by every external measure, Richard built less wealth in 2026 than Diana did, starting from zero. Why? Because his lifestyle consumed 95% of his income. Because his identity was wrapped up in maintaining appearances. Because he could not take risks that might threaten his position. Because he had spent years compounding lifestyle inflation until his high income barely covered his expensive life. The uncomfortable lesson is this: earning a lot of money means nothing if you spend almost all of it. Starting with nothing means nothing if you waste the strategic advantages that position provides. Diana exploited her advantages deliberately. Richard could not exploit advantages he no longer had. In 12 months, Diana went from broke to building wealth. Richard went from comfortable to still comfortable, but no closer to financial freedom. If you are starting 2026 or 2027 with nothing, you have a choice. You can see your position as pure disadvantage and make decisions from that scarcity mindset, working just hard enough to be slightly less broke while maintaining maximum comfort. Or you can see your position as strategic advantage and exploit it ruthlessly. Take risks comfortable people cannot take, make cheap mistakes that teach expensive lessons, avoid lifestyle inflation that traps high earners. One path keeps you broke with a comfortable story about why. The other path is uncomfortable for years but leads to actual wealth. Diana's advantages were not secret. They were not unique to her. Every person starting from zero has these same 3 advantages. The only question is whether you recognize them and exploit them or waste them on comfort and excuses. This is Harper mumbling, and if this story showed you that starting with nothing is only a disadvantage if you treat it as one, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who needs to understand that broke people who understand strategy can outbuild comfortable people who protect lifestyle. Leave a comment about whether you see your current financial position as disadvantage or strategic opportunity. Turn on notifications for future videos documenting the real psychology of wealth building from different starting points. Thank you for watching, and remember, the person with nothing to protect can move faster than the person protecting everything, and speed matters more than starting position when building wealth over time.